So this past week I was doing a teaching on like identity in Christ and how he sees us and how that trumps everything. And I had a really good question come up, and someone asked, like, what about if someone continues to steal? Like, we would call them a thief. Like, how does that relate to what you're saying, who we are, as far as we are who we were created to be, right, versus what we do? And it was a really good question, because we often put labels on things and repeat behaviors, whether good or bad, right? You have people, and maybe you're one of them, that we would call a people person, right? Someone who's just like very outgoing and very friendly, and like people just like being around them, like they're a people person. They enjoy that, right? But on the other side, if you're known for like stealing, we would call you a thief. But it's a label for your behavior. But oftentimes, even in like our culture and whatever else, a label can sometimes go a level deeper to your identity, right? To say like, because the label tells you about your repeated behavior, but an identity tells you who you are, right? So if it's just a label, if you stop stealing, right, we get to take the label off, right? It's no longer what you do. But if it's your identity and it's just who you are, you can't escape from it. And if you believe that's just who you are, you will continue to live that out, because I'm only doing what I am. I am a thief. And so the example that really came to mind was like Gideon, right? Gideon in the Old Testament was acting like a coward. And if you read the story, he's basically trying to sift wheat in a wine press, which is dumb. You need wind. You need to be on top of a high place where there's wind. And so God comes to him and calls him something, calls him a mighty man of valor. And so I've heard teachings on this where preachers will say, look, doesn't God have a sense of humor? And he does. He does have a sense of humor, but he wasn't making a joke. He wasn't being sarcastic. He was calling Gideon what he was always made to be, a mighty man of valor, even though Gideon was playing the role of the coward. And then Gideon, after that, tells God why they can't possibly be true. He goes through a list of things like, I'm from the smallest tribe, the smallest family, and getting a phone call. Call you back. I'm from the smallest tribe, the smallest family, and I'm the least of my family. So then he goes and gives his life lived so far, and goes, these are the reasons why that can't possibly be true. And God completely ignores it, because he's only going to speak to the true Gideon. And so that's why you got to separate a label of like coward, right? And separate that to who you're always made to be, right? Which is way greater. And that's what Jesus redeemed on the cross.